Ego death can feel awe-inspiring and still set you back if you're not grounded. That's the paradox no one tells you. Temporary dissolution without preparation and integration often leaves you disoriented, not awakened. Today, we'll reframe ego death as a relocation of self-structure, not annihilation. You'll learn how to work with breath, intention, and trusted support so that what breaks open can be woven back into daily life. If you've been chasing transcendence, this might be the calm, practical correction you've been needing. You know, there's something rather curious. The harder you try to silence the ego, the more it shouts. You push, it resists. You declare war, it drafts every thought as a soldier. Why does resistance amplify the very thing you want gone? Most people carry a sincere aim: destroy the ego for awakening. It sounds clean, decisive, almost surgical. But you see, that strategy treats a functional tool like a disease. You need an orienting center to move through a day, to say yes, to say no, to place your attention. When you aim the hammer at that center, the psyche reads danger, not wisdom. Here's what happens. Suppression triggers backlash. The system detects an intrusion and tightens control. Thoughts speed up. The body braces. That is not failure, that is a predictable defense. The move to erase the narrator makes the narrator louder, because survival circuits are not nuanced. They are binary, safe or threat. Let me put it to you this way. Think of the old finger trap toy. Pull harder and the weave cinches down. So you pull again, and again it tightens. Only when you soften the pull and press inward does the braid slacken and your fingers slide free. Not force, but a change of relationship. Not attack, but cooperation with the mechanism. Another thing the awake person sees is that the ego runs practical operations. Executive control, boundary maintenance, a narrative thread that lets you keep appointments and remember where you place the keys. In the brain, networks that support self-referencing help stitch continuity. Sudden disruption without scaffolding can feel like the floor dropping out. Derealization, depersonalization, a loss of bearings that isn't wisdom, just disorientation. So, not enemy, but driver. The car still needs steering. If you throw the driver out at highway speed, the vehicle will veer. You don't want a wreck. You want a driver who responds to the road, reads the weather, updates old habits. Retraining beats exile. Jung pointed to the ego as an organizing principle. Useful, limited, not the whole field. The shadow, those disowned impulses and fears, won't disappear because you chant over them. If you bypass that material, it returns with interest. The ego, rattled but unintegrated, can reappear grandiose or brittle. Inflation is the mask you reach for when you skip the hard work of integration. So ask the right question. If annihilation backfires, what does healthy transformation look like? What actually loosens the constant chattering interference without wrecking the instrument that allows you to love, to work, to keep promises? Here's the mini payoff. You don't kill the ego, you relocate its job description. From tyrant to trusted steward. From absolute ruler to competent advisor. It still sits at the table, but it stops running the meeting. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The thing most people call ego death isn't death. It's a temporary reconfiguration of the self-structure, a shift in roles and salience, a downshift of the narrator so that awareness can widen and include more of what's already here. Most people hear ego death and think obliteration. What if it's closer to a lobster shedding a shell? Awkward, exposed, necessary, so a larger one can grow. You don't lose the animal, you outgrow the casing that once fit and now pinches. Let me put it to you this way. Ego death is a temporary destabilization of the self-structure. Experience unfolds without the usual narrator taking notes. There can be awe, vastness, relief, a sudden softening of the borders, and right beside it, disorientation. The reference grid flickers, and for a while, You don't know which way is forward. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The bliss stories are true for some moments, but so are the other moments. Raw shadow arising without filters, time contracting or stretching, familiar anchors dissolving. You may see urges you've hidden, grief you avoided, fears you kept behind a door. Without preparation, that flood can feel less like wisdom and more like being unmoored. Another thing the awake person sees is that identity can loosen without vanishing. Think of an ocean wave, realizing it is water. The crest still travels, rises, falls, but the fixation on being a separate, special ripple relaxes. The wave returns to form, yes, but now with context. The field that holds it was always here. Here's what research points toward in plain terms. When self-referencing systems go quiet for a while, people often report so-called mystical-type experiences. But the outcome hinges on setting, and integration. Your mindset going in, the environment that contains the process, and the way you digest it afterward. Without those, the same opening can wobble into confusion. There's also a clinical edge worth your attention. With scaffolding, such experiences can ease death anxiety. Something profound shifts in how you hold mortality. But abrupt collapse of boundaries can tilt into depersonalization or a kind of spiritual grandiosity. You feel detached from your life, or you crown yourself above it. Neither is the freedom you were seeking. You know, there's a common pattern after a dramatic opening. Seekers come back and build a grand narrative. I am beyond the ego. Meanwhile, their relational habits, defensiveness, avoidance, subtle control, continue untouched. That's bypassing, not transformation. It's the old shell painted gold. So the real question is simple and demanding. If the structure dissolves, how do you ensure it returns wiser rather than wobblier? What lets the new shell form with more space, more flexibility, more truth? Here's the mini payoff. Reframe ego death as a rite of passage. The peak is a threshold, not a trophy. Value lies in the reorganization that follows, the way attention, values, and boundaries re-knit in alignment with what you saw. Let me put it to you this way. The ceremony is half the journey. The homecoming is where the real work begins. And that work, done steadily, is what turns a glimpse into a life you can actually live. Another thing the awake person sees is that preparation and integration do the heavy lifting. Why do most people skip the only parts that stick? Because peak states look glamorous, while the quiet work looks ordinary. But you know, ordinary is where the wiring changes, where habits soften, where the insight becomes a way of moving through a Tuesday afternoon. Let me put it to you this way. You prepare the ego, you expect shadow, and you arrange trusted support. Preparation means you brief the driver before the road changes. Name your intentions, clarify your boundaries, simplify your schedule, and let close allies know what you are attempting. Expecting shadow means you assume the basement door will open. Old fear, shame, rage, grief, so you have containers ready. Trusted support means a person or two who can sit with you, not to fix, but to keep the room steady. Here's what happens when you don't. 3 post-journey risks derail growth. First, shadow flood. Unfiltered material overruns your system, and you mistake volume for truth. Second, false awakening. You crown yourself above ordinary life and stop learning. Third, groundlessness. Your anchors dissolve and you drift, unable to commit, work, or love with consistency. Each of these is workable, but only if you plan for them before they arrive. You need anchors that hold under pressure. Breath as metronome, slow, even, through the nose, longer on the exhale, until the body stops bracing. A simple mantra as lighthouse. One phrase that orients you when thoughts spiral, spoken gently, not as a spell, but as a rhythm. Intention as compass, a single, clear direction that guides choices when everything feels novel. Not many tools, just a few you will actually use. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Outcomes improve when you're not alone. A steady, supportive presence reduces adverse spirals. When your nervous system co-regulates with someone calm, intensity becomes digestible. Regulation practices, breath, sensing the feet, loosening the jaw, tracking the eyes across the room, convert overwhelm into workable waves. You don't chase bliss, you build capacity. Think of the hero's journey. There is separation, initiation, and return. The boon means nothing if it doesn't make it back to the village. The tale is not about slaying a dragon, but about bringing clean water home. In the same way, ego dissolution is only the middle. The return is the integration. How you treat a colleague, how you hold a boundary, how you rest. Practical tools help re-knit coherence. Depth psychotherapy to map patterns you couldn't see from the inside. Dream work to let the psyche speak in its native images. Inner child repair to meet needs that froze time. Active imagination to dialogue with shadow and reclaim energy. These are not decorations. They stitch a reliable self-structure that can include more truth. So the real question isn't, did you dissolve? It's, what did you rebuild slowly on Monday morning? What new habit replaced the old reflex? Mini payoff. Evolve the ego into a skilled driver. Clear boundaries, softer grip, responsive steering. Now you see, chasing transcendence is noisy. Building a life that expresses what you saw is quiet, steady power. You don't need to kill the ego. You need to teach it to serve what's actually true. Not tyrant, but steward. Not constant chattering interference, but a clear instrument held lightly by awareness.